Hello, my name is Tabitha Marie Moss-Smale, and the title of my study is All Work and No Play Make Spanish a Dull Subject. The relationship between free play, student perspective, and negotiation of meaning. So to give you some context of where the study will take place, next year will be my 7th year at Troy Junior High and High School, which is located in the rural mountain town of Troy, Montana. There are about 1,000 people within the town, and the junior high and high school served 213 students last year. A couple other points that will be important to understand the area in which I work. Troy, in and of itself, is 95% Caucasian. There, I believe, are only 3 Spanish speakers, myself included, within the community. We offer 100% free breakfast and lunch due to the high poverty of our area, which is caused by lack of industry. And this study is going to be conducted with my Spanish 2-3 class. In total, there will be 14 students, 11 in the Spanish 2 and 3 in the Spanish 3. This is a combo class due to the lack of participants within the Spanish 3 class, and this is also impacted by the small student body overall. So the reason that the area of focus that I have is because of many of the factors that makes Troy a small, rural, isolated community, there truly is a lack of opportunity for students to engage meaningfully within their second language. And that means that there is a lack of the production of negotiation of meaning, which is key to language acquisition, as pointed out by Long in his interactionist theory. And unfortunately, while having additional Spanish speakers is truly outside of my locus of control, increasing negotiation of meaning within my classroom is absolutely something that I can do. And although I've been trying to ameliorate this since I have joined SLI, I truly believe that I need more opportunities than I currently have. And I'm hoping to see substantial language growth within my students by increasing this negotiation of meaning. Which brings me to my area of study that I am extremely passionate about, which is the idea of play. Play was first introduced to me in the Maps to Snaps class, which was the workshop associated with the transatlantic art class last summer. Our professor, Dr. Bender, assigned us an article by Yasmin Kuntner, who is right here. She is a play expert who has worked for Hasbro, as well as puts on free play exercises within large companies. And her article, Play Isn't Just for Children, well, it isn't peer-reviewed, darn it, was such an inspiration to me, and it really made me think about how I could incorporate play into the secondary classroom. I was a little nervous about it because play is so ambiguous and so large, and so many things can count as play. But the definition of free play is simply play that's child-directed, that's student-directed. And because play has had such an impact on my life in creativity and when I create lessons or in the way that I produce art, I am so excited to bring it into my classroom and truly hope to see an impactful result from it. This has actually led me to 3 different research questions. The first of which is, what impact do free play activities have on students' ability to negotiate meaning, as I am looking not only to increase the amount of negotiation of meaning, but hopefully students' ability to negotiate between themselves and another Spanish speaker. Number 2 is, what is the student perspective on free play activities? As free play is not generally something that's used within the secondary classroom, I think that having the student perspective and understanding it is really key. Even if it does increase their ability to negotiate meaning, if I don't have student buy-in, if I don't have that engagement by students, it truly isn't necessarily going to be effective within my classroom. The third item is, what is the most effective teacher role during free play activities? Initially, I believe that I wouldn't have much of a role given the definition of child-directed or student-directed play. However, upon more research, it seems that I indeed may have a very important role, and I'd like to investigate that more to see what is best. And this actually leads me to my background. And although I'm going to talk about teacher role, I'm going to start with the idea of free play in language. And although I have many articles that relate to this topic, I'm going to share 3 with you today. The first, by Kwan, Bingham, Lucender, Gion, and Elicker, hope I got your names right, is had 2 goals in order to see if toddler and child play or parent play was affected by parent gender or by free play or structured task, which one was better, which is truly what I am focusing on. And what they saw is that free play increased parent and child interaction, it increased play behavior, and most importantly, it increased language use. Bergen also found in 2002 that pretend play has a strong connection with cognitive development, the most important element of which is linguistic competence. Pretend play is connected to free play. Pretend play is simply the symbolic meaning given to actions or objects, but if it's student directed, it can count as free play. The final item was actually focusing on language play, yet another element that's slightly different than play, but can be found within the same realm, especially as posited by Waring, who is another one of my sources. What Bell found is that language that's approached playfully is actually, they find that there's an increased recall within the language learner. Additionally, unusual situations also promotes this recall. My intervention of free play is going to be one, unusual in a secondary classroom, and two, centered around being playful, and thus I hope to see the same language growth that she did within the study that she conducted. The next item is teacher role, and the first I'm going to talk about is Virendi in 2017, and she found that there were 5 roles for teachers within within free play. The most common is the onlooker. The least preferred is the director, as it violates the definition of free play. But I'm really going to focus on the redirector to redirect students to language. This also goes hand in hand with Wasik and Jacoby Vessels. In their 2017 study, they found that there is indeed a role for adult or teacher scaffolding, and this increases language production by questioning students, by giving feedback to students, and by circling around vocabulary that students are unfamiliar with. The first 2 items increase students' play within the language, which is definitely important. The third item that I have is negotiation of meaning, which I'm looking at the foundational work of Long in 1996, in which she defined negotiation of meaning and also really linked it to language acquisition. I do want to note that there are some limitations of these studies, especially given that many of them are done at a much younger age than I am looking at, as I'm looking at the secondary level. Also, there are a few, not many, that are focusing on the first language rather than the second language. And as we know, the language acquisition is different. Areas I need to look further into are those negotiation of meaning and student perspective. Now looking at the methodology for the study, although we start in August, there's only 3 days in which we work with students, so this will start in September, and we will have a pre and post jigsaw or information gap activity. There will then be 2 interventions in which my role will change. So in the first intervention, I will simply have an onlooker role unless students have direct questions for me. In the second intervention, I will have the redirector role, redirecting students to language and incorporating that scaffolding. After each intervention, a student questionnaire that I think you're going to find familiar is going to be applied, and this study is going to be finished right around the end of December or early January, and that coincides with the end of our semester. Throughout the study, I will be conducting field notes as well as a teacher journal. Now to the fun stuff, the intervention. My intervention is going to be a free play activity that utilizes this beautiful makerspace we recently acquired. It is from Teacher Geek. It is 400 pounds and has 15,000 objects that really provides an age-appropriate method to include free play within the secondary classroom. I will have 2 objectives. 1, to play, jugar, and 2, to speak in Spanish. And that's going to be my only rule, is to stay in the target language. As mentioned, I will not have teacher scaffolding in the first intervention, but I will within the second intervention. Now with data collection, I have tied these each to my research questions. I'm going to really look at the ability to negotiate meaning and how that is increased with a pre and post jigsaw test and with a paired t-test. However, just to assure that negotiation of meaning is occurring, I'm going to record, transcribe, and code each intervention. I'm also going to be collecting qualitative data with my teacher field notes. For the second research question, which focuses on student perspective, I will be using a survey that I code and analyze for trends, and I will do informal interviews as needed. I believe this is going to look familiar to you as I actually adapted this from our mini research project in the call class this winter. For my third research question, I will be using many of the items I have already talked about, including recording the play session that will be compared to the first intervention, my field notes. However, they may need to be taken after the intervention rather than during due to my increased involvement with the intervention. And I do indeed have two questions in the student survey that also talk about teacher participation. In conclusion, looking at the happy, silly, fun loving faces of my students, I cannot wait to bring play into their classroom. Not only do I really hope that it will produce language gains, but often I hear my students talking about how stressed they are and how many obligations they have. And I don't want language learning to be one of those stressors. And I truly hope that play free play will not only be able to increase that language, but will be something that students will truly enjoy. Because after all, who doesn't love to play? Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Here are my sources, and I'm really excited to hear your feedback. Thank you.